Welcome to COVID-19, Preparing Yourself and Your Family. This module is meant to educate the public on what many call the hierarchy of controls, a tool used to help determine what the best preventative measures are for risk. My name is Sam Lishtak, owner of Absolute EHS. All safety professionals rely on this hierarchy of control diagram when working through risk. Many other professionals fit into this hierarchy as well. I will primarily discuss medical professionals and public health officials throughout this presentation in addition to safety professionals. Please see the companion module on my website, which discusses what professionals do with more detail. At the top, we have our first choice when faced with a risk, elimination. This means that we have a risk or potential hazard and we can actually make it disappear. For example, if you had an extension cord that was going across a room, you might look at it and say that it could cause an electrical fire, be worn down, or cause someone to trip. If you had a professional electrician come and install a wall outlet in an appropriate location, you would not need the extension cord anymore. You've therefore eliminated the risk for an electrical fire, shock, or a tripping hazard by taking this action. If we are unable to eliminate the hazard, perhaps due to time or money, we move down to the next level. Substitution would be taking the risk and replacing it with something less risky. A good example here would be using a battery pack instead of the extension cord for the item that needs power. By using batteries, we still have a potential fire risk, but it is less likely that because there is less to catch on fire. Before the outlet or the extension cord could have been faulty and started a fire, now only the battery pack could potentially catch fire. We also no longer have a tripping hazard. If a substitution won't work, we move down to an engineering control. Engineering controls are next. This would be a concrete way to isolate people from a hazard. In this case, there is a rubber insulation around each individual wire inside the cord to prevent electrical fire, and then an additional insulating sleeve around the entire cable to prevent shock to people using the cord. These controls would need to be deliberately altered to be rendered ineffective. You cannot forget to insulate your cable. It's part of how it's made. If engineering controls won't work, usually because of cost, we need to rely on administrative controls. Administrative controls are akin to laws and policy. In the case of our electrical problem, administrative controls would be NFPA 7DE, also known as electrical code. Electrical installations need to be inspected and signed off on, and they need to adhere to published codes. One problem with administrative controls is that they are highly subject to human error or lack of knowledge. Did you know that your circuit breaker at home needs to have 36 inches of clearance all the way around? Most people don't. This is one of the many shortfalls with an administrative control. If administrative controls aren't effective, we rely on PPE. Administrative controls usually require the use of PPE, and these two levels are commonly interrelated. Our bottom level, which is the least effective level alone, is personal protective equipment, or PPE. PPE use is a last resort. In the case of our electrical problem, we hired in an electrician to complete the elimination control and install an electrical outlet. While the electrician is working, he or she needs to wear special clothing, boots, eye protection, and gloves, as they're putting themselves in a very dangerous position by confronting the hazard directly. Now, in reality, the electrician would also be able to cut the power to the outlet, but they still need the appropriate PPE in order to protect from shock or accidental electrical discharge if they did not prepare for their project correctly, another potential form of human error. In terms of COVID-19, for elimination, we eliminated the needs for the extension cord. For a pandemic, the only way to eliminate the virus is if we all die. This is not a viable solution, so we need to move on to the substitution level. For substitution for our electrical problem, we used a battery pack instead of an extension cord and wall socket. In terms of COVID-19, a vaccine will act as a substitute for our bodies and approximate the virus so then we can create antibodies. The creation and distribution of a vaccine to a majority of our population will be our best bet as a human race in defeating this pandemic. This is what medical professionals are working on right now. It will be the most effective solution, but it will also take the longest amount of time to develop. Our engineering controls for electrical wires are plastic sleeves around each individual wire and around the entire cord. Unless consciously and deliberately tampered with or grossly neglected, this control is unlikely to fail. There is no engineering control for the community with respect to COVID-19. Our administrative controls for the electrical cord fell largely onto published legal electrical codes. For the spread of a pandemic, administrative controls are mandates to stay home, banning air travel, or the direction to maintain social distancing at a minimum of 6 feet. These regulations are harder to enforce and easy to forget. The key to making administrative controls stick is to make the consequence outweigh the violation. Some countries are giving out very hefty fines for violating quarantine. Others have societies that will socially shame people into following rules. The drives to follow administrative controls can vary, but they are still prone to human error, which is why administrative controls commonly come with PPE suggestions as well. Public health officials are working tirelessly with politicians to push administrative controls through. These things take time, though, and are coming out in a somewhat piecemeal fashion at the moment. PPE for our electrician has similar shortcomings to PPE for our doctors. These items are specific to a task. An N95 is going to have different specifications than a surgical mask, which will have different specifications than a homemade mask. For more information on that, please see my module on masks. In a nutshell, though, an N95 will do more good for someone likely to be exposed to COVID-19, like a doctor or nurse. A surgical mask is better for someone who is actually sick or coughing, as it will contain sputum of the sick person. And homemade masks will be more useful to someone asymptomatic as a deterrent to touching their own face. A bandana will likely be safer for this person, as there are fewer other risk factors involved. The person wearing PPE still has to remember to wear it, remember to inspect it, dispose of it after use, maintain it, make sure it fits correctly, has the appropriate specifications, and is affordable and available. PPE is the last line of defense against this pandemic. Safety professionals have been helping disperse and fit test people since late December, when COVID-19 was first identified. Our assistance and use is evolving as time goes on, but the hands-on aspect of work started a few months ago for many of us. So what can you do? We are the lowest 2 levels of the hierarchy of controls right now. Essential employees, those associated with food and medicine, specifically need to be out in the danger zone, or the hot zone as we call it in emergency management. They can only rely on PPE, and we need to hope they have the correct supplies and know how to use it. As a non-essential person, everything in our power needs to be done to abide by the current administrative controls. For some, this means quarantining yourself at home. For others, the administrative control is social distancing of at least 6 feet, but given that you're watching this video, you know that this is playing with fire. Stay home. If your family needs groceries, try your best to leave the kids at home and only have one person from the household go shopping. This person needs PPE and they need to understand how to properly use it. Better yet, have one person do the shopping for multiple households and do a contactless drop-off to the neighbors or other family members. It is human nature to forget the rules sometimes, so know that this one person is a potential point of failure for the whole household. For this reason, we need to limit these trips as much as possible. I referred you to the module on social distancing if you'd like more information on this topic. As soon as it becomes available, we need to figure out how to prime our bodies and make antibodies. Vaccines or blood treatments may end up being the answer to this, but it's too soon to tell. If we take this seriously now and rely heavily on administrative controls, courtesy of public health officials, and PPE from safety professionals, we can buy more time for development of a more permanent solution. I would also mention that the less harm we befall on ourselves by driving and getting into potential car crashes or breaking bones by climbing trees, the more focused medical professionals can be on the pandemic patients, and the more easily we can avoid going to a hospital and breaking social isolation rules. By combining the efforts of safety professionals, public health officials, and medical professionals, we can get through this together, but we need to know who has what expertise and understand each other's background and focuses. Thank you so much for listening to this module on the hierarchy of controls. Please feel free to email me if you have any questions at samantha.lishtak@absoluteehs.com. Feel free to check out my website for other content, including more YouTube modules, as well as companion documents and things to do at home. Finally, please consider supporting my small business at this time, particularly if you found this information or the worksheets and documents on the website helpful. Donations can be made via PayPal or through Venmo to Samantha-Lushtak, Lushtak. Stay safe and stay home.